Hello everyone, spring is approaching, so this is a brilliant time to have a look at outdoor interpretation. Outdoor interpretation can be so many different things and take place in so many different settings. However, it also sometimes seems like it's trickier for museums or heritage sites to tell stories outdoors, because there seems to be so many things that attract or distract rather visitors' attention and take their focus away from a story. Everything from nature to different sounds to, well, the weather. It has now started to rain, so much for spring. Beautiful views, all that. However, there are ways you can get all these things to work for you and with you in your interpretation as well. So I thought, let's have a look at a few examples of outdoor interpretation, of what it can do, and also some of the things that are good to consider when telling stories outdoors. As always, remember to like, subscribe, and add your comments. Outdoor interpretation can be so many different things, and it can take place almost everywhere. So just to have a look at a few examples here. First of all, a very obvious one, archaeological excavations or ruins. That's a brilliant opportunity of doing some outdoor interpretation. Also, something like historical parks and gardens. You have buildings or architecture. Maybe you want to share a specific story about the outside of a building or a facade, or you can have a fortress. It can even be things like historical stadiums, for example. We also know things like city interpretation. So, for example, city walks. You can have building sites or underground stations are phenomenal places to do interpretation as well. Art in the landscape. So, for example, culture parks or sculptures. It can also be things like, there's a really good example here, all the way back from 2008 with the Grand Tour in New York. That was a fantastic project where copies of artworks, famous paintings, even the frames were set up around the city of York, so outside in parks, outside shops, outside schools and various buildings. And it created a completely new way of interacting with the artworks, because it was very surprising often to find these artworks on the outside of buildings. And there were also some really funny situations, like the bottom picture here to the right, where you have the painting of a grotesque old lady outside a beauty shop. So there was a really funny situations as well here, but it was just a brilliant way of engaging with artworks in a very, very unexpected and new setting. It can also be things like historic cycling or walking routes. So it might actually be quite a large area where you have various things that you want to make visitors aware of. And also, of course, bear in mind that you experience things very differently depending on whether you walk or you cycle. Reconstructions, for example, buildings, structures, gardens, and so on. There is a little example here back from 2018 from the Hampton Court Palace Garden Festival. There are many ways of doing reconstructions. It can also be part of experimenting, for example. City or village cemetery walks and tours, they can be guided or self-guided, maybe via a map, maybe via QR codes or apps and so on. It can also be outdoor exhibition or street art, so interpretation on walls, fences, in open squares. It can be digital QR code apps. It can also be something like lighting of landmarks, for example, when we celebrate or when we mourn or when we come together or something. Here is a rather classic example of a panel on a fence, for example, to an entrance, where you have not just text that informs you or gives you a bit of historical information, but also maps, a kind of "you are here" thing. Also information about what can I bring? Can I bring my dog? Can I bring food? And so on. Opening hours, things like that. There are lots of information you can put on panels like these. And of course, it can be audio and video interpretation, so soundscapes, everything from a voice, so someone who is narrating a story, to horses approaching, to marching soldiers, to everything really. Now, a few things to consider around outdoor interpretation. First of all, maintenance and repair. There's no doubt that there is more wear and tear than you will find indoors on a lot of physical interpretation, whether it be digital things you have in the landscape, or panels and maps and whatever, it is necessary to keep an eye on how things are doing and to maintain it. And having a plan for how often you look after things, what sort of repair might be required here, can save not just a lot of money, but also quite a lot of time. Also things around updating information. So if you have regular events, is there a way of adding information, maybe posters or something, to outdoor interpretation? Is there a way we can either change information very quickly or add something in a very easy way? If you're using images, videos, things like that, make sure you have a right to use them, of course. And a very important thing about digital interpretation, if your interpretation requires any kind of Wi-Fi or mobile connection, for example, if you're downloading an app or you're using QR codes or whatever it is, make sure that is available. Very often heritage sites or historical buildings are out in the middle of nowhere, and having a good connection can be really hard. I remember an example where I was doing some interpretation with a team in a Second World War bunker, and securing Wi-Fi in a building like that, or in a construction like that, is nearly impossible. So just have a think about how easy it is to get access to these kind of things. That brings us on to access issues, for example, for disability use, or if you have children with you, is this a long route to walk, for example? Is it very hilly or difficult? Are there any sort of restricted areas where visitors are perhaps not allowed to walk? If so, are they clearly marked? Can we do anything around wheelchair use, for example? If so, how is that possible? And that also, of course, goes hand in hand with security issues. Is this a safe space to be in? Who are responsible if something goes wrong? There might be a certain level of self-responsibility. So if you choose to cycle this route, or you choose to walk a very hilly route or something like that, it might be that you are actually responsible yourself as a visitor for certain security perspectives as well. But just having in mind, is there anything we can do as an interpretation site security-wise to make sure that no accident happens? It can also, of course, involve things like having life vests if you're near water, or some kind of emergency phone or something like that in certain places. Now, a very important question to leave you with when it comes to outdoor interpretation. How do you actually want visitors to engage with the content, with the landscape, with the stories, and with the interpretation? In other words, what sort of experience is it you want to give them? There is no question that when you are outdoors, there are so many things that can distract you from the experience. Everything from nature to different sounds to other people. When you are indoors, in, for example, a museum setting, you are there for a purpose, and it's a little bit easier to kind of keep focus. But outdoor, this can be incredibly difficult. So if there is a specific message you want to get across, make sure you keep focus on that. Try not to make your interpretation too layered here. It can be possible that your main message actually drowns a little bit in too much distraction when you're outdoors. So having a clear message and a clear focus on content and the story you want to get across is, if possible, even more important when you're doing outdoor interpretation. Outdoor interpretation can be really, really exciting because there's so many different perspectives to it. And there's also that physical element of being outdoors, of going for walks and so on, that just adds a little bit extra to it. What are some of your experiences around this? It would be really lovely to hear from you.